Hello and welcome back to my channel and to my series where I talk about Final Fantasy VII. It's been about a couple months since my last video essay, so I'm really excited to be back. Before I begin, I want to make a few disclaimers. I will be talking about PTSD a lot in this video, and I will try my best to approach it as delicately as possible. Keep in mind that I'm not a licensed professional. If you or a loved one has PTSD or suspects that you have PTSD, I highly encourage getting professional help. I have, and it has changed my life. There will also be some spoilers, so here's your warning now if you haven't played the OG game or Rebirth yet. Also, there is, of course, the infamous LTD. I do have a ship, but I'm going to try my best not to get into that as much as possible. It is my hope that we can all focus on the bigger themes, plot, and conversation discussed in this video in the comment section. I will also be mainly focusing on the topic at hand and not going over every single plot point that happens during this part of the game. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a clinical psychiatric disorder developed after a person of any age has experienced or witnessed a traumatic event. Trauma takes a variety of forms, but often involves experiencing a natural disaster, serious accident, terrorist act, combat in a war zone, rape, assault, or other acts of violence, according to the definition of PTSD from the American Psychiatric Association. According to PTSD information from Anxiety and Depression Association of America, symptoms are categorized in three main ways. Emotional numbness, including avoidance of places, people, and activities that cue feelings associated with the trauma. Re-experiencing the traumatic event through recollections, flashbacks, or nightmares. Increased arousal, such as difficulty sleeping and concentrating, feeling jumpy, and being easily irritated or angered. And, of course, we see Cloud, and in some of these cases, Tifa experience these kinds of symptoms and signs of PTSD, and I will be going over that in this video. 5 years before the games begin, during a mission to survey the reactor due to monster sightings, Sephiroth discovered the hidden truth of his origins as Jenova's progeny. Consumed and maddened, he burned Nibelheim to the ground, including Cloud's home with his mother still inside, murdered Tifa's father, and nearly killed Tifa, causing a scar on her chest. Cloud and Zack were subsequently captured by Hojo and underwent experiments with S-cells, and Cloud became Mako poisoned and was broken out by Zack about 4 years later. Tifa, on the other hand, went through a month of surgery, months of rehabilitation, and spent years of her life rebuilding her life in Midgar. Her anger over this very traumatic incident led her to Avalanche. 5 years after the incident, she finds a Mako poisoned Cloud in the slums. Seeing her face makes him snap out of it, but she can tell that something is wrong with him. So she asks him to join Avalanche so that she can keep an eye on him. Eventually, events lead them to finding out that Sephiroth is still alive, and they go on the journey following him to try to stop him from destroying the planet. Along the way, Cloud tells his version of the story of the Nibelheim incident. However, his account conflicts with Tifa's. She keeps this information hidden and only tells Aerith because she's afraid of what the truth would do to Cloud, who is already volatile due to his PTSD and Jenova cell manipulation. Suddenly, their journey leads them to the place that started it all, Nibelheim, the place where this traumatic event took place. Revisiting a place of trauma really triggers PTSD. According to a 1994 study on memory published in the research journal Nature, when first exposed to a traumatic event, the brain releases norepinephrine, a hormone related to adrenaline that sparks an intense emotional reaction. Intense emotions cause the brain to store an adrenaline-charged memory long-term, which can quickly be recalled when a person enters another setting that resembles the original trauma. The brain is built to keep us safe. The mind is on a lookout for warning signals so that when we feel fear, it helps to mobilize us. and decide if we should fight or flee or freeze. Traumatic memories can be recalled by specific cues that may be associated with physical space. Similar locations, similar smells, similar looks or lighting can all resemble aspects of a space where trauma occurred. This is absolutely happening with Cloud and Tifa. On their way to the town, Tifa admits to Cloud that she thought that she was ready for this, but it feels too real. When they arrive at the village, Tifa says, "No." Cloud has a PTSD flashback of Nibelheim on fire with the water tower collapsing. He glitches back to see that the water tower is fine. In fact, the whole village looks like it had never been burned down at all, as if it had never happened. Barrett is the first to vocalize confusion. Then Tifa runs, tells Cloud to come look, touches a pillar, and then says, "It's brand new. They've rebuilt the whole village." Barrett remarks that he thought that Cloud had lost it again, but was cut off before he could finish. It's definitely the elephant in the room. He quickly changes the subject and asks who they think rebuilt it. In quiet resentment, Tifa answers, "Shinra." Kate's jolly demeanor breaks the mood, as he says that they need to find the terminal to get information on the Temple of the Ancients. They enter the village and find that it's filled with a bunch of rope dudes and locals. The supervisor notices them, comes over, and Kate explains why he's there. The guy asks about the rest of the party, so Tifa steps up and says that she used to live there until, The supervisor explains that Shinra assumed direct control over the village 5 years ago, and is now a Mako poisoning treatment center. Thus, all property rights have been transferred, so if that's why they're there, they need to take it up with special facilities at corporate. Kate cheerfully thanks him and goes to the database. The supervisor asks the rest of them to not stay too long, even though it is their hometown. Cloud and Tifa look at each other with so many emotions passing between them. Everyone scatters at this point, and this is where the Affinity dialogues are for this chapter. We'll start with Aerith, who is at the foot of the water tower where Cloud and Tifa made their promise all those years ago. Of course, Aerith doesn't know this and just impulsively climbs up the tower, as she definitely would do. Cloud protests in exasperation, but just shakes his head knowing that there's no use. I don't want to make this about the LTD with going into specific details about their interaction, so I'll keep this focused on the topic. She asks him where his house is, and he points it out to her. "Oh, it looks cozy." After she says that, he glitches and has a flashback of his house on fire. Noticing his telltale reactions, she apologizes for saying that. He reassures her that it's okay since it's all new to her. He then points out what all the other buildings were, saving Tifa's house for last. At that moment, Tifa walks past the window, and the girls wave at each other. Aerith guesses that this is where he went to look at her, hoping she would wave at him. I have him say that it's something that he would do. She says that if she were him, she'd be up there all the time too. He tells her that he's heading down, but she decides to stay. And I didn't do this in my playthrough, but I know that she gets angry because she wishes she had a childhood friend like that. She doesn't know how complicated it really was, so I do give her a pass. But I think she also could have asked him about the details to get him to open up about it. But that's just my opinion. Overall, I think her dialogue here, beyond fuel for the shallow shipping debates, serves the purpose of reminding him how his life in the village was before he left for Shinra, and certainly before the incident. That's something I want to bring up about trauma. It's very complicated. Of course, the traumatic event and the feelings surrounding that are at the forefront, but it's not like the mind forgets the good too. It's just harder to see it. He finds Tifa at her house. While facing the window, she tells him that she never understood why her dad went into the reactor and why he chased Sephiroth. Ever since she woke up in Corel, she thought that it was a bad idea. He was up against a famous war hero. What did he expect? But after she made a life for herself in Midgar, she finally understood. He had enough and was angry. Everything he worked so hard for was gone in an instant because Sephiroth burned it all to the ground. That's why he went, even though there was no chance he would make it out alive. And like him, she took her pain, grief, and feelings and turned it all into anger that led her to Avalanche. However, anger doesn't last. So when Avalanche became more and more violent, there wasn't enough anger left to hold back her fear and her doubt. It was taking a serious toll on her, and that was when Cloud showed up. I have him say, "Have I helped you get through it all?" She says that he has given her the courage to come back there. A lot has happened, but now that they're there, she knows that this was the right decision. Now she knows that they rebuilt the whole village to try to sweep the incident under the rug and pretend that it didn't happen. Her resolve to not let them get away with it is renewed. She's sick of Sephiroth's cruelty and Shinra's lies. She's sick of all of it, and she is going to do something about it. And it's really understandable. Because of what happened, she lost her hometown, her father, and nearly lost her own life. She spent 5 years rebuilding her life only for Shinra to do that to her new home, in Sector 7. And now she has returned to her hometown only to find this elaborate cover-up. It not only invalidates her trauma and what she went through, but is an attempt for Shinra to deny any accountability. Does that sound familiar? After this dialogue, she brings up when they were kids, and he would always be looking at her. He clumsily tries to brush this off, but she continues saying that every time they made eye contact, he'd look away, and when she tried to talk to him, he would ignore her. Cloud admits that he was a pain in the ass as a kid. Tifa confesses that she was the opposite. She needed everyone to like her all the time. A part of her is still like that, and she hates that about herself. The dialogue here is, again, a reminder of their past in Nibelheim that had nothing to do with the incident. It's also a moment of self-awareness from Tifa of one of her weaknesses that she's working on, which shows her growth as a character and is, in my opinion, very relatable. This dialogue also shows Cloud's development as a character and is central to the internal conflict of the plot of the game. Upon entering the hotel, Cloud glitches and sees Zack going up the stairs. He finds Barret in the lobby. He brings up how the robe dudes are everywhere and asks if they came on their own volition. He answers that question himself and blames Shinra. They raised a whole village and then built a fake one on top of it. They can't let them keep getting away with this, and they have to do something. I have Cloud say, "You're right, screw them." Then Barret says that they'll make them pay for what they did to their home. After that dialogue, Barret says that he doesn't know what went down 5 years ago, but he's there for him and Tifa, whatever they need. And if it's too much, just say the word and they'll leave. It's such a sweet moment from Barret because he has been through his own Shinra-related trauma with Corel, and he also really cares about both Cloud and Tifa. It also shows how much he respects them and their boundaries for how much they can take from being exposed to their trauma. I just love this cast. After talking to Barret, Cloud goes upstairs to the room he stayed in 5 years ago. Glitching, he sees Zack except for his face. Zack asks if he has any friends he wants to see or a girlfriend. Then he says, "I bet you're dying to hear about mine," and starts to tell him anyway, despite Cloud seeming disinterested. What a surprise. Cloud asks if she's from Midgar. Then the camera shows Zack's face as he says, "Yep, a real city mouse." Cloud glitches back and pieces things together. He remembers Zack's name, that he's from Gongaga, is head over heels for Aerith, and that they fought together as soldiers. He was there 5 years ago and came with him on the mission. He starts to glitch really badly and then asks himself where he is and what happened to him. Cloud finds Kate at the terminal, who has limited access from the console. He asks the supervisor to let them get into Shinra Manor. The supervisor explains that they need to ask his boss for clearance. Deputy Commissioner Murasaki's at the reactor conducting an inspection for corporate. He's due back the day after tomorrow, but he hasn't been in touch to confirm. So Cloud suggests that they track him down. They get back with the rest of the party. Yuffie and Tifa decide to go to the reactor with him. He asks Tifa if she's sure, and she asks, "Ask anyone around here. I'm the best there is." It's a callback to 5 years ago. Kate suggests that they take the new bridge, and the rest of the party stays to wait at the console. Another disclaimer going into this section, I'm not going to talk about the Wutai stuff from this chapter. I'm going to save that for another video, since I want to focus this video on Cloud and Tifa's handling of their trauma. While they're on the bridge, and while Cloud is looking at the river, he glitches and remembers when they fell off the bridge 5 years ago. One of the Shinra grunts was lost to the river. However, the grunt glitches to show Zack's face instead. Then Cloud glitches again, seeing Sephiroth saying that he's in Fate's hands now. He glitches back, and Tifa asks him what's wrong. He says that he remembers what happened there and what happened to Zack. He explains that the bridge broke, he fell, got swept away, and he thinks that Zack's dead as a result. He confronts Tifa, saying that she never forgot, and that's why she's been acting weird. While looking down, she says that she didn't want to upset him. He turns back around and in frustration and disbelief says that Zack was his friend and asks how he could just forget him. Then he looks down at his hand and says it's the degradation. It's hollowing him out bit by bit. That's not quite accurate, but that's for another video. Tifa holds his hand in both of hers and says that he's wrong. He remembered. It'll be okay. She looks down with a sad and uncertain look in her eyes. You can tell that she's trying so hard to be strong for the sake of both of them. Cloud puts his hand on top of hers, thanks her, and then says that they need to tell Aerith, because she deserves to know what happened. Tifa agrees, but asks him to let her do it since they're close. From further away, Yuffie tells them to keep going, so Tifa has him promise to keep this between them. When they find the Mako Spring, Cloud glitches, sees Sephiroth, and then says verbatim what Sephiroth said about 5 years ago. Alarmed, Tifa notices, grabs his arm, and says that they need to get out of there because of the Mako. In the reactor, when they find Murasaki's body, Tifa glitches and remembers when she found her father's body. She puts a fist over her chest where she was wounded by Sephiroth and starts hyperventilating. Those are PTSD symptoms. Flashback, phantom pains from physical injuries from the traumatic incident, and hyperventilation. Cloud puts a hand on her shoulder. After a few moments, she slows her breathing, turns to him, and tells him that she's okay. They decide to check the room where Genova's body was located 5 years ago for survivors. When Cloud sees the plaque with Genova's name, he glitches, sees Sephi, draws his sword, charges, makes an aerial strike, and then Sephi meets his blade and says, "Soon, Cloud, soon." Cloud glitches back, panting. Tifa places her hand on the center of his back and asks if he's okay. He nods and answers, "Yeah." Yuffie figures out how the console works. Kate answers, and Cloud takes one last hateful look at the Genova plaque. The worst section of the game happens after that, but I'll skip to after the whole party reunites in Shinra Manor. First, I want to talk more in depth about what just happened. Even though their accounts of what happened 5 years ago differ, they were still present for the same traumatic event. Therefore, them both being there really helps them face it together. There was a moment where Tifa needed help grounding herself to the present, and then there were a few moments that Cloud needed the same thing. They can understand each other because they both lived through that hell, and they can lift each other back up. I have seen criticisms that they are trauma bonded, and that is false, because a trauma bond usually happens between a victim and an abuser, especially in a situation where there is an imbalance of power. Neither of them are abusers or using this event to take advantage of the other. They simply have just been present during the same traumatic event, one that was beyond their control. They are helping each other through it, but they are also trying to do some of the work themselves. Bonding over shared trauma is not the definition of a trauma bond. A trauma bond is something that is a lot more complicated than that and varies case by case, of course. Again, I'm not a licensed professional, but we all collectively really need to be careful and aware of what things like this mean, because if terms like this are used incorrectly and irresponsibly, it causes harm to a whole community of people who actually suffer from serious things such as a trauma bond. Just because you have a ship and you hate certain characters that threaten your ship does not mean you are justified to throw around terms like this in attempts to character assassinate. It is harmful to real people, so let's all do better, and I include myself in that. Let's be more aware of the things we say online. And sometimes just go touch some grass, please. It's also important for me to bring up again how they both connect over things that are completely separate from the trauma they went through. They also have a history together and feelings there from since before the incident, and that is canon, that there are those feelings. Argue all you want, but that's a part of the plot of the game, so their bond extends way past merely sharing trauma. Another criticism I have seen is that Cloud doesn't do shit for Tifa or Aerith. We have just seen how that isn't true because he helped Tifa ground herself after having a PTSD-related panic attack. Earlier in this chapter, she also told him how he helped her gain the courage to come back to Nibelheim. Setting aside all shipping implications and arguments, they needed each other to get through the symptoms of PTSD when encountering things that reminded them of the incident. Moving on to the manor, they meet Vincent Valentine, who treats them with suspicion, especially since they're clearly not Murasaki. He lets up when they explain that they're after Sephiroth. He lets them through and goes back into the coffin, like the emo vampire boy he is. When they find the terminal, Kate suggests that they do recon. While exploring, Cloud stumbles upon some tubing on the ground and starts glitching. The further he goes in, the more he glitches. Tifa and Aerith both notice and call for him. He keeps going and finds the tanks with the letter S, and hears Hojo talking about S cell samples. It's very creepy. He glitches so much that he crouches to the ground. Tifa puts a hand on his shoulder and says, "Cloud, let's get out of here." She puts his arm around her for support and helps him walk out. Vincent is there with a gun pulled on them, and they fight his beast form. I'll of course dedicate a video later to Vincent after we see more of him. He lets them out of the manor. Outside they run into Roche, which I will also cover in another video. He does turn into a robe dude after their battle and warns Cloud about the degradation. Cloud is looking down at his hand again, while Roche's voice saying there's no escaping the degradation plays in his head. Tifa sees him looking at his hand, and both her and Aerith run to him. Aerith reassures him that it won't happen to him. Tifa says that she's right and he'll be just fine. She has that sad and uncertain look on her face from before when he remembered Zack. Barrett also notices, but switches gears saying that they need to get to the keystone from the gold saucer. Some final thoughts. First, when I played this for the first time, I was shocked by the inclusion of Cloud remembering Zack and Jenova manipulating those memories. After playing through this section 3 times total now, I appreciate this change. Recalling memories repressed by PTSD can happen slowly, and especially when re-entering that location, encountering the same smells, the same sounds, etc. But there is also Jenova's manipulation because it suits her and Sephiroth for him to not remember the full truth until the moment where they can use that to break him completely. That will happen at the Northern Crater in part 3. I also appreciated how this led to him confronting Tifa and her explaining some of her thought process of why she was withholding information from him of what happened from her point of view. I feel like the devs are doing a really good job resolving some misunderstandings some people in the fandom have been running with for almost 3 decades. Now, whether that works on these people or not, you be the judge. I also want to bring up how this chapter shows even more clearly how the whole party has been delicately tiptoeing around Cloud and his deteriorating mental state. It shows the increase in tension and foreshadowing leading up to what happens at the end of Rebirth, as well as what will happen at the Northern Crater in part 3. Tifa shows it the most as she is trying her very best to not only deal with her own PTSD, but help Cloud with his. She has been his emotional rock this whole time, and I can't help but to feel for her and admire her emotional resilience. But also hope that she can catch a break sometime. But that won't happen for a while. Finally, I want to praise this chapter for how it handled and captured what it's like to have PTSD, especially when you return to where that event took place. I have mentioned before that I have been diagnosed with PTSD, so this game and these characters really speak to me and help me deal with my own PTSD and sorting through that trauma. That's the beauty of media depicting mental health in a way that is helpful, realistic, and relatable. I already know from reading your comments that these games have helped some of you with your mental health struggles as well. I want you all to know that you are not alone, and I want to again encourage you all to not be afraid to seek help. There are mental health professionals out there who are qualified to help you, and will certainly do much more good for you than some person talking about it on the internet. Before I end this video, I want to thank you all for watching and supporting this channel. I also want to remind you all to be respectful in the comments and to remain on topic on what I discussed in this video. Any divisive or hateful comments will be removed in order to keep this a safe space for fans who just want to appreciate the deeper themes of these games. If you haven't yet, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I am so excited to be back, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye!